I built Squeaky Whale so I could have a place to talk about the things I love, making editorial videos about games, culture, media, and hobbies. But there are a lot of places on the internet for that kind of thing, and I didn't fool myself in thinking that this would be the one-stop shop for the best kind of that content. There are so many great writers out there that I'm just not going to compare to, because writing isn't my background. I am very happy with the things I write for this channel, but it's not my number one priority. In fact, I actually built Squeaky Whale with two different priorities in mind. One, giving a more personal perspective on the media I consume, and two, making the videos look damn good, because that's my background. I'm a video producer, and I have been for about 10 years now. But I don't talk a lot about the production in front of the camera. It mostly stays behind the scenes. And I want to change that a bit because production is my one true love. It's the thing that I focused my most time and effort on. So in this video, I want to talk about a recent upgrade I made to my workflow thanks to this little guy, the Atomos Ninja 5. So before I get into why I got the Atomos Ninja 5, I need to go back a bit and explain a little bit of my previous workflow, which involved this guy, the Blackmagic VIdeo Assist. The Blackmagic VIdeo Assist is a video monitor and recorder. It will take the output of any HDMI source and record it onto an SD card. I use this all the times for shooting videos both in the studio and outside on field work, and it's been an invaluable part of my production gear ever since. But that's not the main reason I bought it. Despite me thinking that a monitor recorder is a vital tool for any video producer to have, it's actually the secondary feature that I use. The main reason I got this monitor was for video game capture. That's right, any footage you have seen that has not been just me talking to a camera, whether it be a video game, capturing the PC, or even some anime, I've captured using this Blackmagic video monitor recorder. So why did I go with a pretty expensive professional piece of video gear over, say, something like an Elgato? Well, that's because the Elgatos and the like are consumer pieces of gear. They work just fine for the average person to plug into their PC, capture some gameplay, and post it on YouTube. But again, video production is my actual career path, and my needs are a little bit more demanding than, say, the average YouTube streamer. I'm not just capturing gameplay footage and talking over it for the most part. I'm doing a lot of editing work, and the formats and bit rates and compression that these little boxes use just don't meet my very specific needs. I needed something that recorded high bitrate ProRes to make my editing workflow a lot smoother. And yes, there are little dongles that sort of allow for that. For example, this guy is the Magewell. It is a kind of an in-between the Elgato and these much higher production value boxes. It's a lot more expensive too, but still not nearly as expensive as a Ninja. And it's a pretty great piece of kit, and I use it a lot for streaming, but I still do not use it for recording because then I would still need it to be attached to a computer. I'd rather have something standalone, something that can record onto removable pieces of media. So at that point, my options were the Blackmagic VIdeo Assist, one of Atomos' various recorders, or a few other options that were out there that were way too expensive. The reason I originally chose the Blackmagic was because of its price point. For one, it was about $500. It recorded ProRes natively, and it recorded to SD cards. So that's why I made that decision, and for the most part, I was really happy with my purchase. For the past few years, that's the main device in my entire workflow, and pretty much every video you've seen on this channel for a while has gone through that little Blackmagic box at some point. But there was this nagging issue for a long time that I didn't realize until maybe a couple months in, and it was incredibly annoying, and that was color. The accuracy of the colors on the Blackmagic VIdeo Assist weren't up to snuff. Now, to most people, you probably wouldn't have noticed this, especially if the only thing you're seeing is the video finalized on YouTube, because you have nothing to compare it to. But here in the studio, I'm sitting next to 3 different capture devices with 3 different outputs, and then spending hours editing those same pieces of media, the difference becomes clear, and I'll show you. Everything coming out of the Blackmagic VIdeo Assist has this greenish yellowish hue to it. It's also pretty overexposed, and depending on what device you're capturing, sometimes that overexposure makes the footage unusable. This is especially true of the PC when I would capture anime. Now, I know what the problem is. It's a pretty complex one that involves color spaces and what kinds of devices output what kinds of color information, and it's just not worth getting into all the way in this video, so I'll just bring it down to the basic gist. So, different devices output different kinds of color information. For example, the camera I'm using right now and a bunch of other cameras output YUV or YCBCR. Now I know YUV and YCBCR are technically two different things, but people use them interchangeably, and for simplicity's sake, so will we. So this camera is hooked up to the Blackmagic and it's outputting YUV, and everything works great, everything looks perfect because that is what the Blackmagic was made for. But things like PCs and consoles don't output YUV, at least not by default. They normally output RGB. Sometimes you can set a console to output YUV, specifically if it's a 4K console, and depending on what kind of stuff you have hooked up to your PC, you might be able to switch it to YUV as well. I am not in any of those positions. My consoles and my PC only output RGB, which on any normal occasion is fine, except the Blackmagic apparently doesn't like those RGB signals. That's what led to all these things being slightly yellow and a bit overexposed. These things were annoying and a big frustration, but they weren't unfixable. I could do a little bit of color correction here, a little bit of exposure correction over there, and I was able to get the footage close to how it should look. It wasn't perfect, there was still a pretty big difference in my eyes, but to the average viewer, it would be fine. The problem is that these are things I shouldn't need to do. I shouldn't need to spend time color grading my footage that isn't me on camera. So this year comes around, I sell my car and I get my tax return, and I have a little bit of extra cash that I think I should spend on upgrading my workflow. So enter the Ninja 5. I bought myself one, and I bought myself a new SSD, expecting to be able to sell the Blackmagic and make back some of that cost. And up until now, just like the Blackmagic, it's been working mostly great. The past few videos you've seen in this channel have been made using the Ninja. But of course, nothing ever goes smoothly in video production, and the Ninja has its own problem, though it's a lot less egregious than the Blackmagic's. The first is that the Ninja doesn't like full RGB signals. That's right, in addition to having to juggle YUV and RGB, there's also different kinds of RGB. Limited and full. Now in general, the rule is to just match the source setting with the monitor setting. If your monitor supports full, match your source to full. If your monitor supports limited, match your source to limited. It should look the same as long as they both match. Most TVs only support limited and most monitors only support full, though there are exceptions. For example, my TV supports both. So because of that, I set all my devices to full. But once I hooked it up to the Ninja, I found out that the Ninja doesn't really like those full signals. Instead, it was interpreting them as limited, which meant the blacks were crushed. Everything was too dark and too contrasty. But again, not a huge issue. I just changed all my settings to limited onto the consoles and on my TV, and everything looks fine as is now. The bigger problem comes with a very specific device I have still hooked up to my TV. That's the Wii U. For whatever reason, the Ninja just does not like the Wii U. You plug it in and it's constantly dropping the signal. This also only happens when it's set to 1080p, not 1080i or 720p. The Blackmagic does not have this problem, and neither do any of the other capture devices I have. It's a very strange problem, and I'm pretty sure it involves some handshaking nonsense. For those of you who don't know, HDMI is terrible, it's the worst, I hate it, and a lot of other producers hate it. It sucks for production because of a thing called handshaking. Handshaking is what allows the source and the monitor to kind of talk to each other and pass information to each other. When that handshaking doesn't go well, things like flickering happen. I tried a handful of different solutions, including using new HDMI cables, disconnecting my devices from my Matrix switch and then hooking them up directly to the Ninja, and even using an EDID emulator, which is supposed to emulate handshaking signals to avoid this kind of problem. None of those worked. I even spoke to Atomos support. They were able to reproduce the issue and aren't sure if they can fix it or not in future software updates because, well, the Wii U is a very specific device and not many people use it anymore, so I don't expect them to fix this one bug just for me. So that was a bummer, especially since I still use the Wii U to capture videos for the Backlog series, which will now have to move to a PC-based emulator because of it. But even that problem and its solution is highly preferred to me over having to constantly fix the color issues on every piece of footage created by the Blackmagic. Both these issues were easily resolved, and I can now confirm that I'm officially using the Ninja as my main piece of capture hardware from this point forward. I'm very happy with the Ninja 5. It's been a worthwhile purchase. Now, do I recommend anyone trying to start their YouTube gaming channel to get this thing? Of course not. I'm a video producer. I have a very specific workflow. This thing is perfect for someone like me. not for the average person just trying to play some games on the internet. But there also doesn't seem to be a lot of people talking about this higher end production workflow for something like game capture on here. So I'm happy to talk about the Ninja 5 and the things I've learned from it, and some of the tweaks I've had to make to my workflow to make it be the perfect device for me. And hopefully this video will help someone down the road who might have had similar issues with their Ninja or their Blackmagic, or if they just want to know how these kinds of things work. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this video was somewhat entertaining and kind of interesting because it got really technical and really nerdy, but this is the kind of things I love to talk about, so maybe we'll do some more of these down the road.